It was just past midnight when the Iron Lantern's garage stirred with an unexpected sound of knock. Soft, hesitant, almost swallowed by the hum of a distant highway. Inside, three men worked in quiet rhythm, the kind of rhythm built by years of grease, grit, and brotherhood. The air hung thick with the scent of oil and steel. Ryan, the biggest of the three, wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days. His eyes narrowed toward the door. Knocks this late never meant anything good. Jinx, lean and restless, set down his wrench, and Copper, older, slower, just nodded toward the noise. Ryan crossed the floor, boots echoing on the concrete. He cracked the door open a few inches, his palms still braced against the frame in case trouble decided to push through. A boy stood there 14, maybe 15. Dirt streaked across his cheek. Hoodie torn, eyes too sharp for his age. He looked like someone who'd forgotten how to be a kid. Behind him, in the dim light of the alley, was a little girl holding a comic book against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. She couldn't have been more than 10. Ryan's voice came out low, rough as gravel. "Help you?" The boy didn't flinch. His voice cracked slightly when he answered, but his words carried something steady beneath the fear. "It's not for me. I'm scared for her." Ryan's grip on the door tightened. The garage fell into silence, broken only by the distant tick of cooling metal. "What are you asking for?" Ryan said. "One night," the boy replied. "Just one night where she can sleep safe. I'll stay outside. I just need to know she's okay." Jinx stepped forward from behind the tool bench, arms crossed. "Where are your parents?" The boy's jaw set. "Gone." Kappa's voice came next, low and measured. "What's your name?" "Pete," the boy said. "And her name's Victoria." Something passed between the men's silent understanding built on years of seeing too much of the world's rough edges. Ryan opened the door wider. "Get inside." Pete hesitated, his hand tightening on his sister's shoulder. "Just her," he said. "I don't need." "I said get inside." Ryan's tone left no room for argument. The two stepped through, and the door closed behind them with a heavy metallic click. Inside, the space felt larger than it looked from the street walls lined with tools, bikes half-built under yellow light. The girl's eyes widened, curiosity breaking through the exhaustion. Copper disappeared into the back and returned with a folding cot. Jinx rummaged through a storage locker and pulled out a blanket. It smelled faintly of motor oil and detergent, but it was clean. "Sit," Copper said gently to Victoria. She looked up at Pete. He nodded, and she obeyed. Jinx filled a mug with milk and set it on the hot plate they used for coffee. He handed it to her when it was warm enough to steam. "Here." She took it with both hands, careful, polite. "Thank you," she whispered. Pete stayed on his feet beside her, watchful, like a guard dog who hadn't decided if he trusted the room yet. His eyes tracked every door, every shadow. Ryan studied him. "When's the last time you slept, kid?" Pete shrugged. "I'm fine. That's not what I asked." Silence. The kind that carries weight. Jinx crouched next to Victoria. "You like that book?" he asked, nodding toward the comic in her lap. She nodded shyly. "It's Captain Underpants." "I got a nephew your age," Jinx said. "He loves those." "You read it already?" "3 times." Jinx smiled. "We'll find you a new one tomorrow." Victoria's eyes flicked toward Pete again, seeking permission. He gave a small nod. Copper pulled up a stool and sat near the cot. Jinx leaned back against the workbench. Ryan stood near the door, silent, but not unkind. Minutes stretched into hours. Victoria's eyelids began to flutter, her head dipping forward, then jerking back up. Finally, she curled onto her side, pulling the blanket to her chin. The mug sat empty on the floor beside her. Within moments, she was asleep. Pete didn't move. He sat on the floor beside her, back against the wall, his hand resting near her shoulder. Ryan crossed the room and laid a hand on his shoulder. The boy tensed, but didn't pull away. "You need to sleep too," Ryan said quietly. "I'm good. You're dead on your feet. Someone's got to watch the door." Ryan studied him for a long moment, then said, "I'll take first watch. You close your eyes for 2 hours. Deal." Pete looked up, searching for deceit, for the catch. He didn't find it. "Okay." He lay down on the cold concrete floor beside the cot, still close enough to touch his sister if she stirred. Within minutes, exhaustion won. Ryan stayed standing, arms folded, eyes on the door. Copper glanced up from the cot. "He's just a kid," he murmured. Ryan nodded slowly. Yeah, but he's been carrying the weight of a grown man. Jinx exhaled, looking toward the sleeping girl. One night, huh? Ryan's voice was quiet, but certain. We all know it won't be just one. Hours passed. The garage settled into stillness again, the kind that comes only after storms. Outside, the world kept turning, unaware that something small but life-changing had just begun inside a biker shop on the edge of town. By the time morning light pushed through the high windows, the Iron Lanterns had already made a silent choice, a choice to stand between danger and innocence, to become protectors in a world that had too few. And though none of them said it aloud, every man in that room knew the same truth. Sometimes, family doesn't come from blood. It starts with a knock in the dark, and a kid brave enough to ask for help. Morning came slow to the Iron Lantern's garage. Pale sunlight slipped through high windows, tracing long beams across the floor where dust floated like quiet ghosts. The smell of coffee mixed with oil and warm metal. For the first time in what felt like forever, the old place felt less like a workshop and more like a shelter. Pete woke with a start, his hand shooting out toward the cot before his eyes even opened. His fingertips brushed Victoria's shoulder. She was still there, still breathing, still safe. Her small hand clutched that comic book like a promise. Copper was already at the coffee maker, pouring a mug. "Sleep okay?" he asked without looking over. Pete nodded, though the concrete had left a dull ache in his back. "Bathroom's through that door," Copper said. "Clean towels on the shelf. Go on, freshen up." The boy hesitated, as if expecting the offer to vanish. Then he gave a quiet, "Thanks," and disappeared into the small side room. When he returned, the mirror's reflection had told him what the others already saw: dark circles, a bruise on his jaw, hair standing at odd angles. He looked older than he should have, older and worn. Back in the main room, a woman stood near the workbench, setting down a box of cinnamon rolls. Her silver braid hung over one shoulder, and her hands were steady in a way that spoke of years, not weakness. "You must be Pete," she said, her voice warm enough to thaw the chill in the air. "I'm Gloria." He nodded, unsure how to respond. Victoria stirred at the smell of sugar and cinnamon. She sat up slowly, eyes still heavy from sleep, and froze when she saw the stranger. Gloria didn't step closer. She just smiled. "Good morning, sweetheart. You hungry?" Victoria looked up at her brother. Pete gave a small nod. "Yes, ma'am," she said softly. "Well, come on then. These are better warm." They ate standing around the workbench: Pete, Victoria, Gloria, and Copper. Jinx appeared halfway through, grease already on his hands, as if the morning had started hours ago for him. He grinned at Victoria. "Sleep okay?" She nodded, a smear of icing on her lip. "Good," he said. "You looked pretty tired last night." It was small talk, light, easy, but there was a careful undertone in the way he watched her. Not suspicion, more like he was piecing something together. After breakfast, Gloria offered to take Victoria to wash up, maybe braid her hair. "Only if you want," she said. Victoria hesitated, eyes flicking to Pete again. He nodded. She slipped her hand into Gloria's, and they disappeared down the hall. Jinx watched them go, then turned to Pete. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Pete's shoulders tensed. "About what?" "Just want to make sure you're both okay." They moved toward the open bay door. The morning air was cool, clean. Outside, the town was just waking up, unaware of the quiet storm that had arrived overnight. Jinx leaned against a tool chest, arms folded. "Before I joined the club, I worked trauma. 6 years in emergency. You see enough kids, you start noticing patterns." Pete's jaw tightened. "What kind of patterns?" "The way someone moves. Flinches. The way they watch doors." Pete's silence was its own answer. "I'm not accusing you of anything," Jinx said softly. "I can see you'd walk through fire for her. But somebody's been hurting her, and I need to know how bad it is." For a long moment, the boy didn't speak. His fingers curled into fists at his sides. Then, finally, his voice came out flat, quiet. "It's not me. I know. It's the guy my mom left us with. He's not our stepdad, just some man who moved in and started paying the rent. CPS didn't care, as long as the bills got paid." Jinx said nothing, just listened. Pete's voice hardened. "He's got rules. Everything in its place. No talking after 8. You touch the fridge without asking, and you regret it. She's 10. She forgot one night, left her stuffed animal on the couch." He swallowed hard. He grabbed her, shook her, told her she was lucky he kept a roof over her head. I got between them. Took it instead. Jinx's eyes softened. You did the right thing bringing her here. Pete looked down, voice shaking. I didn't know where else to go. Can I check her over? Just to make sure she's okay, nothing broken or infected. I stay with her. Wouldn't have it any other way. When Gloria and Victoria returned, Victoria's hair was neatly braided, and she looked younger somehow, like a little of the fear had been brushed away. Jinx crouched to her level. Hey, kiddo, mind if I take a quick look? Make sure you're healing up okay? Victoria looked to Pete for reassurance. He gave her a nod. Jinx was gentle, careful. But when he rolled up the sleeve of her jacket, the bruises spoke louder than any words could. Faded yellows, deep purples, evidence of what no child should endure. He didn't react outwardly, but his jaw tightened. You're a tough one, he said softly. These are healing. You're going to be okay. Victoria nodded, relieved when Gloria changed the subject, asking if she'd like to stop by the thrift store later to pick out a new book. As soon as Victoria left the room again, Copper pulled out his phone. His voice was low, clipped, purposeful. Melanie's coming, he said when he hung up. And I got Sandra's number, the CPS worker who still gives a damn. Ryan, silent near the door, gave a slow nod. Good. He looked at Pete. You did the right thing, bringing her here. Pete didn't believe it, not fully. He just nodded, because he didn't have words left. By afternoon, the garage buzzed with quiet motion. Ryan, Diesel, and Wrench prepped their bikes, leather vests catching the light. They didn't say where they were going, but everyone knew. Pete stood by the door, watching. Copper stepped up beside him. They're just looking, he said. Not engaging. Just want to see for themselves. Pete nodded, though his stomach twisted. The roar of the engines broke the calm. 3 bikes thundered out of the lot, heading toward the trailer park Pete had escaped. The sound lingered even after they vanished from sight. Inside, Gloria sat with Victoria, reading from a worn paperback about a girl and her dragon. The child was captivated, her finger tracing each line as if it were a spell. You like dragons? Gloria asked. Victoria nodded. They're strong. They're smart too, Gloria said. And good protectors. Victoria looked thoughtful. Do you think dragons are real? Gloria smiled. I think the people who act like dragons are real. The ones who protect others. Victoria turned her head toward the garage door, where her brother still stood. Like Pete. Exactly like Pete. Across the room, Copper handed the boy a toolbox. Here, he said. Make yourself useful. Organize the wall metrics separate from standard. Pete started to protest, then stopped. My dad used to, he began, but the memory trailed off. Copper didn't push. Then you'll get the hang of it quick. The work came as a relief. Sorting bolts, lining up wrenches, it was simple, methodical, quiet. Every click of metal helped his mind stop spinning. The engines returned before he expected. He dropped a socket and looked up. Ryan swung off his bike first, followed by Diesel and Wrench. None of them spoke right away. Copper met them halfway. Well, Ryan glanced toward Pete, then motioned for him to wait. The men stepped into the office. Their voices were low, serious. It's bad, Ryan said finally. Trailers falling apart. Paint peeling. Trash everywhere. Guy was on the porch with a beer, watching the road. Diesel's voice cut in, sharper. Place should have been condemned. No kid should live like that. Ryan nodded once. They're not living there anymore. When they came out, Pete looked at them, searching for something, answers, permission to breathe. Ryan laid a firm hand on his shoulder. You made the right call leaving, he said. That wasn't a home. That was a cage. Pete nodded, throat too tight to speak. 2 hours later, a car pulled up outside. It wasn't a bike, wasn't family, something official. A woman stepped out, suit pressed, eyes sharp. She carried authority the way others carried scars. Melanie, Copper said, greeting her at the door. She spotted Pete immediately. You're Pete. Yes, ma'am. Good. Let's talk. She led him into the office with Ryan and Copper. Her tone was all business, but her eyes held something human behind them. Tell me everything. From the start. And he did. Not because it was easy, but because someone finally asked. When he finished, she set down her pen. Here's what happens next, she said. I'll file for emergency custody for Victoria and for you. The state will investigate him. If what you've said checks out, he won't see either of you again. Pete's voice cracked. Where will we go? Melanie looked at Ryan, then back at the boy. That depends. There's a caseworker I trust coming tomorrow. If she deems this place safe, and if you both want to stay, we can make it happen." Ryan didn't hesitate. "They can stay." Melanie nodded once. "Then we'll make it official." Pete didn't even realize he was crying until Copper handed him a napkin. That night, Victoria fell asleep on the cot again, this time with a new book tucked under her pillow. Pete stayed nearby, watching her chest rise and fall in steady rhythm. Jinx worked quietly at the door, installing a heavier lock. "Just in case," he said when Pete looked over. Pete nodded. Just in case. Outside, the wind carried the faint hum of distant engines. Inside, for the first time in a long while, there was peace. It wasn't over, not yet, but something had shifted. The Iron Lanterns weren't just a club anymore. They were guardians. And somewhere deep in his chest, Pete began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he and his sister had finally found a place to stop running. By the time dawn begins to thin the darkness, the clubhouse feels different. Not louder, not softer, just heavier. The kind of weight that settles in a room after something irreversible has been decided. The teen sits at the far end of the long wooden table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee he hasn't touched. Across from him, the men who once looked like shadows now look unmistakably human. Tired eyes, scarred knuckles, quiet glances exchanged without words. Outside, engines start and stop, one by one, then fall silent again. Plans are forming, not shouted, not argued. This isn't chaos. It's precision born from years of knowing when to act and when to wait. The boy finally speaks, his voice steadier than before. He thanks them not with dramatic words, not with promises, but with the kind of gratitude that comes from someone who knows he has reached the last door he could knock on. One of the older bikers nods and tells him something simple. "Fear doesn't make you weak, it just tells you what matters." They move fast after that. A phone call made from a burner. A route chosen that avoids familiar roads. A jacket placed gently over the boy's shoulders, not as a symbol, but as protection. When they step outside, the night is giving way to morning, and the world looks deceptively normal. Birds calling, sky lightening, nothing to suggest what nearly happened. The sister is brought out quietly, eyes wide, clutching a backpack that holds her entire life. No one stares. No one asks questions. One biker kneels to her level and tells her she's safe now. For the first time in hours, she believes it. As the bikes roll out, there's no roar, no dramatic send-off. Just motion. Just resolve. The clubhouse door closes behind them, returning to what it was before: wood, metal, and silence, yet changed forever by one midnight knock. Later, long after the road curves away and the sun fully rises, one of the men stays behind, cleaning the table, wiping away rings of cold coffee. He pauses, thinking about how easily they could have ignored the sound at the door. How simple it would have been to stay out of it. Instead, they chose otherwise. And somewhere down the road, a teen who ran out of options learns that sometimes the most unlikely doors are the ones that open when it matters most. Weeks later, the road tells a quieter story. The teen no longer jumps at every sound. The sister laughs more easily now, the sharp edge of fear slowly wearing down into something manageable. They're settled in a place that doesn't ask questions, a place where names can change and the past doesn't knock without warning. It isn't perfect. Healing never is. But it's safe, and for them, that's everything. Back at the clubhouse, life resumes its familiar rhythm. Engines get tuned. Arguments flare and fade. Nights stretch long. Yet something subtle has shifted. The men don't talk about what happened, not directly, but it lingers in the way they look at the door after midnight, in how quickly someone stands when a knock echoes through the room. One evening, a package arrives with no return address. Inside, there's nothing valuable by most standards. A handwritten note. A photo of two kids standing in sunlight, smiling awkwardly, as if still learning how. On the back, 3 words are written in uneven ink. "We made it." The note gets passed around once, then placed on a shelf above the bar. No speeches, no jokes, just a quiet understanding that some rides don't end where you expect them to. Years from now, someone will tell the story wrong. They'll exaggerate the danger, the violence, the heroics. They always do. But the truth is simpler and heavier. A door opened, a choice was made, and a line was crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. And on certain nights, when the engines are off and the world grows still, one of the bikers will sit outside, listening to the wind move through the trees, thinking about how a single knock at midnight reminded them all of something they'd nearly forgotten. That brotherhood isn't about patches or rules or roads. Sometimes it's just about answering the door. Time has a way of sanding down sharp edges, but it never erases the lines completely. Years pass. The clubhouse still stands where it always did, weathered by sun, rain, and stories that never leave the walls. New F.